Can we have the lights out, please? Well, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do this afternoon, we're going to give you the history of the River Weir shipyards, engine works, sailing ships, and the industries on the river. What you have to remember, our history goes back as a shipbuilding town to 1357, when the first ship was built at Hendon. Then, eventually, there was dozens and dozens of shipyards all over the riverside, North Hilton, South Hilton, down the docks, down at Hendon, but there weren't shipyards what we know, what we've known of. The big shipyards come along in the 1830s and the 1840s. And what we're going to do, we're going to give you a history of the river and the docks and the shipyards and then engine works. This is the building of the piers. Now this is the North Pier, the one with the lighthouse on. It was started in 1885, and as you can see, they've got the bogies here to take the rubbish away. And this is how they laid the foundations. That concrete bag weighs 116 tonne. That would be lowered down at low water, so that the concrete bag would go on the stones, what you saw on the previous slide. And here is supposed to be the last stone of the pier. Now, there were no different in Victorian days what we are now, they're told lies, because this is not the last stone being laid. That stone, all these blocks of stone weighed 42.5 tonne. There's the old steam crane that used to stand for many, many years on Roker Bottom. But that's supposed to be the last stone being laid, but we'll show you that they're told lies. Because here, there's the crane, there's the lighthouse. Now that lighthouse must have been built before this, because it's there. They must have had the cameras on there to take the photograph of the pier being finished, and then they would continue along to join it. But that there is the building of the piers, and opened in 1904 or 1905. Well, I served my time at the North East Marine, and what we used to do, the North East Marine used to build steam engines, not diesel, steam engines before the war. And we used to go to maybe a ship getting built at G.L. Thompson's or Pickersgills or Orson's. Used to come down, we used to go up and work in the shipyards, putting the skin fittings on, putting the propellers on. And then the ship used to be launched and used to come down to the Shea Legs in the Hudson Dock. And the engines and boilers and all the fitting out was done there. And that's what we were doing. We served our time as fitters and turners, but mostly fitting. And that was my life. Now the Orion came out of down the river loaded with coal 25th of January 1913. And what happened was, it was a very bad night, a gale raging, and she struck this old pier. This is the old pier that was built in 1797. She struck that and she broke part of her back. And that's the wreck you used to see on Roker Beach when it was low water for many, many years. And I do think now they've removed it, because over the years there's been a lot of children and people cut and damaged with it. Now here you were coming to the North Dock. At one time it was called the Weir Dock. In 1837, Brunel, the railway king, he designed the North Dock. Now this photograph was taken in the 1930s. There's the timber, there's the ships unloading the timber there. Now they do say that they're modernising it and they're building houses here and what have you. And this is where John Bloomer's shipyard was. He's the man that built Thompson's Memorial Methodist Chapel in Dundas Street. That's what they looked like in them days. That must be the foreman, because he's better dressed than this lot. But that there is the Bloomers Riveters Squad, 1889, a very good photograph. Now the North Dock had a lifeboat. We had a lifeboat on the river, a lifeboat in the South Docks at the south entrance, and we had a lifeboat at Grangetown. This is the one that used to be in the North Dock, and there's the shipyard in the background. You can just see it. I've been consistently worked on heavy industry, because we did work in the shipyards, J.L. Thompson's, Jackie Crone's, and Bobby Thompson's we didn't, because it closed in 1929. But the likes on the river, we worked in different shipyards. The only yard I never worked in was Doxford's, because they had their own engine works, and they built their own engines for their ships. Now remember, J.L. Thompson's was a very famous shipbuilding firm. They didn't start on the North Stands. They started off at Hilton, but that's a very early sailing ships being built at J.L. Thompson's. I wouldn't like to guess the date, maybe it's 1860, 1865. And here we have J.L. Thompson's. It's 1946 photograph. They started in 1846. But the other shipyard that was there was that one there, Jackie Crone's. Now, Jackie Crone's started in 1807. Now, in 1946 or 47, J.L. Thompson's bought that land and bought the shipyard out, and Jackie Crone's closed forever. Now, here is what the ship being launched was like. Now, it's the Port Quebec, but the main thing, ladies and gentlemen, is the drag chains. They're the drag chains that used to be piled up alongside the berth where the ship was getting launched off, and they used to take the strain and the weight and stop the ship going across the river and colliding with another quay or anything. They were the main things, that's the drag chains. Now, you could go for a halfpenny across the river, or if you lived in Hedworth Williams's houses on the north side, when you paid your rent, you got ferry tokens. But this is the ferry where it used to go from the south side of the river to the north side, and this is the North Sands steps where they went up. Now, I dare say a lot of people remember what they were like on a football day. They were even standing on the top of things. Now, remember the Manor Quay, it used to stretch along here. Also, we had an engine works, Dickinson's Engine Works, next to this shipyard. And now that Dickinson's Engines Work opened in 1852, built a lot of steam engines, but that there's 1906, and there's the timber stockyard. Now here we have two things on here that's of interest, or three things. We have sailing ships, we have the house on stilts, and as you can see, this is the old wood timber yard right opposite Austin Shipyard. It opened in 1875 or 1870. The other thing is that building there, the Bromage Cinema. It was bombed during the war when there was an air raid shelter underneath, and a lot of people were killed. The Austin Shipyard started in 1826, and they always built colliers. They never built any ships over 8,000 tons because the yard wasn't big enough. And here is what it looked like. There's the fitting out key. Now, we used to work at Austin's when they put the engines in. There's a ship got camouflage paint on. It was trying to decoy the submarines from seeing which way it was going. And there's the one with a barrage balloon. There's Manus Quay in the background. All this is gone forever. And I think it's a
a campus for the students, their houses. And here is a very lovely photograph of the humpers. Now, a humper was a man that worked with the craftsman, the plater, and he used to be the humper that used to hump the plate about while the craftsman punched the holes in. And we don't know whether this is at Austin's or at Duxford's, but that's the lady workers in the Second World War. But the majority worked in the shipyards as tack welders. That was a welder that tacked the job together, and then the time-served welder came along and he welded it properly. There were a very famous force in the shipyards and engine works during the Second World War, the women workers. Now, Bobby Thompson's, he was the son of J.L. Thompson's. He left his father's business and built a shipyard at Southwick in 1852. He also took over the bridge dock. But there you are, there's a lovely ship in the dry dock. There's the wood staves here, keeping it upright. We don't know what to call it, but that is about 1856 or 1855. Now, I want you to look at that bridge. Now, that bridge was built in 1797, modernised in 1858 by Robert Stevenson, the railway engineer. And then another bridge was built in 1928. It was built by a man called Burden. That's how we get Burden Road today. There is what is salt pans, and that's how it's called Pan Lane. There's the railway bridge built in 1879. There's the old bridge built originally 1797 and modernised in 1858. And here's the new bridge being built over it in 1927. And it was opened in 1928 by the Duke of York. And there's old Sunderland power stations in the back and Lambton drops. And it's in the bridge dockyard. That ship's getting launched sideways into the river at Bobby Thompson's dockyard side the bridge. Here we've got in the background the sheepfolds and what have you, where the foundries were and the granaries. But that photograph is 1903. That's Weymouth Colliery. These is Bell's Drops. Now that's the McCall & Pollocks. Now a lot of people didn't know there was an engine works there called McCall & Pollocks. That opened in about 1889, I think, and it closed in the 1930s in the Great Depression. And here is a very unique photograph. It's a sailing ship, but it's inside of another ship. And that's what they used to do in them days, in the 1860s. They hadn't dry docks, there was only the graven dock side of the bridge. So to get a ship off, they used to maybe make this ship here, this has been a ship, and it's been sunk on the riverside, and then they would flood it, and then the sailing ship would come in, and then they would pump the water out and repair the ship that was inside. But that photograph's a very early photograph. Now, George Clark's opened in the 1800s, a very famous builder of engines. It was at Southwick. It had a great big crane like this, and I think it's only in the last few years it's all been pulled down and has been modernised with new buildings. Now remember, Pickersgills opened in 1838, and rather fortunately the Pickersgills family held control of that shipyard for nearly all its lifespan. Further up here there was another shipyard called Priestman's, opened in 1886 or 1887. John Priestman's. Now he was a very famous man in Sunderland. He provided all the cash for a lot of charities, infirmaries and what have you, and hospitals. Of all the shipyards in Sunderland, he was the only shipyard that wasn't in the Shipyard Masters Federation, and he was always known as the Blackleg Yard. Now, Shaw's Brothers opened in 1852, and they're on the south side of the river. Shipbuilder and ship repairer. Mostly they're doing ship building. And here we have a very famous ship, the Arkway. It was built by Shaw's Brothers in 1933, and it was the first number of cargo ships constructed and designed by John Isherwood for a new arc form type of boat. It was welded, and in them days nobody knew about welding. There was some in America, but this was one of the first times they tried it out. But that there is a very famous ship in the era of Sunderland when welding first started. That's Short's house there where the family lived, and that's one of the early sailing ships what was being built by Short in that era. Now, Duxford started in 1840 as a shipyard, and Duxford's family ruled the firm of Duxford for many, many years until after the Second World War. As you can see, this is a turret ship. They do say it was built, one of the reasons was when it went through the Suez Canal, because it reduced the typical width of the ship, and they were paying on the width of the ship, so they did save money by building turret ships, and Duxford must have built dozens of turret ships in their history. This is where the ship was built on. It was all tallow and grease, and then the ship used to slide down, for some reason the berths opened and the ships went on the bottom. Now what they would have to do, they would have to wait till high water till the ship lifted and either get the tugs to port out or move these under it and let it slide off again. But that, as you can see, it's a turret ship and all, so it must be Duxford's. Now here is a beauty. That is the daddy of the foreman of the lot. Now can you imagine getting a clout off him when you were young, when you were a catcher boy? Because you see, the catcher boy used to be the boy that used to catch the rivets after the hater man had hated them. He used to toss them along with a pair of tongs, and the catcher boy had a bucket, and he used to catch the rivet and run to the riveting squad. But they say it's William Duxford and Sons, foreman. But I think that one is the daddy of the lot. That fella there, he's wonderful. But he must be the boss. He's the platers here. Somebody here, they're bending. And this is it, Duxford's, I think. And it's in the 1900s. They didn't drill the holes in the plates, they punched them. And this frame here is being punched. And here is the engine works. Now the engine works started in 1878. There's the crankshaft there in the bed plate. There's some of the cylinders there, and there's the cylinders there. And there's some more crankshafts here in the bed plate. And that there is Duxford's engine works. So it's after 1878. And here is the fireboat. Now this is Duxford's fireboat. Now in 1943, on the weekend, we had one of the worst air raids on Sunderland. The Greenwell's Quay and tanks were set on fire by parachute mines. And there was a ship sunk in the dry dock, there was a ship sunk in the river, and there was a one sunk at the sea legs. They sent this ship down to fight the fire. The fire, or the petrol out of the tanks, or the oil, was ignited, and it flowed into the river, and some of it got onto this boat here, and it was badly damaged, and it was stored back to Duxford to be repaired. And here we come into Sir James Lane's. Now James Lane's was one of the oldest shipyards on the River Wear. 1703. That was when there was time when they were building little sailing ships and dozens of sailing ships at the time. And here is the Torrance. Now that's not at the shipyard, that's in Australia. Because what happened was, while she was on one of the voyages, she hit an iceberg. And when she got to Australia, they dragged her up on a pontoon, and the Australians repaired the fore end of her. And that's the Torrens, a very famous sailing ship, a clipper ship that used to run for the wool in the Tay, built by Lanes. Now, when I went up the river with Kate 80 a few years ago to give a description of the river, that log gate's still there, but it's filled in, as I say. That log gate's still there. But that's Sir James Lane, very, very famous shipyard in Sunderland, and it was at Deptford. One dinner hour, a German Heinkel bomber came from inland, and he flew down the river, and he dropped the bombs in the river. And one of the bombs landed in Lane's shipyard. There was one man killed, and then the Heinkel bomber flew out to sea, and it was shot down, and the crew was brought into the river.
And then in 1951 or 52, I went to the coal board and I worked on steam engines, railway engines. At that time, we were in the loco shop, and we have photographs of that, the big loco shop, where it used to take about 10 locos to be repaired. And there was the machine shop there, and we used to work on all the locos, take the boilers off the frames and do all the likes of that. So, and then in the 1960s, we got diesels. At the end of 1959, we got diesel engines. And then we had the diesel engines to maintain. And then when all the engines stopped, well, we were busy mainly on the coal-based machinery.
Now, Hedworth Williams has had the quarries at Fulwell. They're still there today, some of them. And he had a railway line where horses pulled trucks down here, and they burnt it here. And then they loaded it onto wherries, and they used to take it down the river to be loaded onto other ships to be exported. Here we have Lambton Drops in the background on the south side. And where they used to bring the coal down, they used to bring it through Bishop Mouse Cemetery. And it's only in the last 7 years they pulled the old bridge down, one of the oldest bridges in the country. And they pulled it down, and it's gone forever. And they used to bring the coal down between the churchyard that used to be off Silsworth Road Bank down to the Drops. Then the Lambton family bought it. And this is what the Drops looked like. There's the steam cranes. Here's all the pit props. The ships used to go into the south docks loaded with pit props, and they would get unloaded. Now, if there was any pit props for the Lambton collieries, they were left in the ship and they were brought up here to be loaded with coal. There's the Lambton Tunnel, there's the Hetton Tunnel. They used to bring all the coal from the collieries at West Durham down to Lambton Drops or down through Mowbray Park to the south docks. But that's the Lambton Tunnel, and that's the Hetton Tunnel, and there's one of the tankies there taking water in, and there's another tanky down the shunting. But I worked there for quite a few years on the steam engines, and we had a rare time.
We used to repair and overhaul the tankies in the main liners, because you remember, Lambton Drops was one of the biggest parts of the river that exported coal. It was bigger than Bell's Drops, where the Weymouth colliery is. What happened was I was at Philly Yard, and if there was anybody over bad at the Drops or they wanted an extra hand, I used to go down, maybe stop a year. And I think it closed 1958 or 1959. I would finish down there about 1956. Went back to Philly Yard and stopped at Philly Yard. No, it was a dirty job, mine, but we enjoyed it.
Now, what you want to do someday, ladies and gentlemen, you want to go on the bridge and look over the bridge and imagine how they've got all these ships in that river. And look at all the tugboats. There's Orson Shipyard, there's the Manakay, and there's a tugboat taking this steamer either up the Lambton Drops or Bell's Drops for coal. But that photograph is a lovely photograph taken in the 1930s. Now, there's a sailing ship there, and there's a steamer. Now, if you look closely, ladies and gentlemen, it's an open deck bridge. Can you imagine anybody being in that when it went to sea in bad weather? And here is a very famous ship called the Reclaimer. It was the boat that used to go around the lighthouses and take the lighthouse crews and their supplies when they were changing crews in the 1920s to 30s. It was also used for exploring the seabed or going to a salvage ship where there was a ship sunk. And it always used a Sunderland crew. Here's the Fire Queen. This is the police part here. This is the river here. And there's a very famous shipping company, France Phoenix. Here we have the cement quay, Wylam Wharf. Wylam Wharf was built in 1860. And that's one of the last buildings on the River Wear. Here we have the ferry boat. There's the Scorcher Engine Works. Here we have a very famous tug here, the Cinema Star. During the First World War, these tugboats were ideal tugs for the rivers in France. The Cinema Star and some of the Way Commissioners' tugs were taken to France, and they're the ones that towed the barges up the river at the Somme battle, loaded with ammunition, and brought the wounded soldiers back instead of being back in their ambulances. That's what Wylam Wharf looked like in 1890. There's a very old ship in the background. You see it's got an open bridge again, that one. But there's the old horses there, all waiting to be loaded up. But that was a very famous quay, and the Rose Line Shipping Company used it. This man was called Scott, and he was the waterboat man. Now this boat used to be filled with fresh water, and he used to go around the docks in the river selling the water to the shipping companies for the ships, because he could sell it cheaper than the water company could deliver it from the quay. And here is a collier. Now that's what the colliers looked like during the Second World War, and they were the boats that used to run A-Boat Alley down to London with coal and coke for the power stations. Now that's up at the Rack up at Southwick, and it's been bombed, 1940 or 41. The water's being pumped out by the Fire Queen. Boat, they called it the Zealot, and she's on the bottom of the river there, 1941, up at the Rack up at Southwick, and there's the shipyards in the background. We had Scott the waterboat man, now we had Scott the diver. There's a Mrs. Curtis goes to the over 60s last night. She's one of the Scots, and she was telling me they lived in the house on the docks for many, many years. And in the background here, we have one of the gaslight boats that used to run for the power stations and the gas companies down the south of England. And here is a beauty. This is the Commissioner's barge. The Commissioners or the port authorities used to go up, down, and inspect the quays, or maybe the dredges, but that photograph is 1880. Now that customs house was built in the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. When they come to build the deep water quay, they pulled that lovely old building down, and it was used as rubble in the foundations for the deep water quay, and we lost it forever. That's what that quay was like, and there was a lot of old families lived in these, and a lot of, as you can see, a lot of fishing couples on the quay there and in the river. Now this is the north side of the river. There's the pilot house there. This is a hailing house now. Every ship that came in was hailed by men in there, where they'd come from, what they were bringing in, how many crew they had, and what size tonnage the ship was. Now, when they went out, they had to do exactly the same the reverse way. And here is Greenwell's Dry Dock. Now, Greenwell's Dry Dock used to be downside the South Docks. Here's the log gates into the river, into the Hudson Dock, and into the Hendon Dock, built in 1850. And here is what the dry dock looked like 5 years ago. A man called Tom Upper and I got permission to go down here. We went down these steps here and took this photograph. Now, that's been filled in forever, and we've lost it. That's what the river looks like today. And I'll say, when you look down here and you look at the previous photographs for all the ships in the river, it makes you wonder how they got in the river, the size of the river we've got.
Now, I had permission to go down to the port authorities and copy a lot of photographs down there by the way commissioned before they were breaking up. And I was talking to one of the men there that had been there 45 years, and I'd worked on the docks all my life, and I'd worked on the river all my life, so we did know the history personally of the docks and who built them and how they were built and the warehouses and all the shipyards on the river and engine work. So it was a gathering together of all the information what you had personally and then what you could get by picking other people's experience.
And here we come into the South Docks. It's 1890. Remember, we had two entrances to the river. We had the entrance through the new piers here. We had an entrance in the south entrance here. And here is the south entrance. That's the lower drum. And here's a ship struck a rock or a wreck. It's just been coming in and she's sinking herself. That photograph is 1885. We used to go and fish on there in the 1920s and 30s when we were apprentices. There's the harbour master's house. There is the log gates. And that there is the River Weir Police. Now, later on, this is where the Fire King used to be stationed. Now, remember, Bartram's started in 1837. But he didn't start down at the South Docks. He started up at North Hilton. There's a ship on the stocks getting launched 7th of August 1872 at Bartram's down at the South Docks. This is the North Eastern Marine. Eventually that became Tommy Young's quay, and they used to break all the ships up after the First World War and the Second World War. There's the North Eastern in the background. Now the North Eastern, remember, opened in 1865. Now this part here was 3/4 destroyed by 2 parachute mines that landed on the top in 1943, and quite a few men were badly injured fire watching. In the book what I've got in the house about the North Eastern Marine, has got 100 men on this photograph. These are the cylinders, these are the bed plates they've been moulded, and that's what the foundry looked like in 1900 at the North East Marine at the South Docks. Now the foundry closed in the Depression years of 1928. There's the North Eastern shear legs here. This is where the North Eastern used to build put all the engines and the boilers in here. The only engines we didn't provide was Doxfords, because they built their own engines. But all Pickersgills, Yale Thompsons, Jackie Crones, Orsons and Shorts, if we had the engines to put in, this is where they came to be put in. There's one of the granaries there. This here is the Hudson Dock, built in 1850 by George Hudson. And here is the morning after the air raid. There's the shear legs. They dropped the bomb side the quay, and they destroyed part of the plant and part of the winding house, and it was out of operation about 3 months. Fortunately, no one was killed that night. Now here, these are the old warehouses built in the 1850s. Now, for many, many years, they were granaries. Now, if you go to Liverpool, you go to Hartlepool, all the old warehouses are all preserved in Liverpool. But not here. The first chance they got, they let them rot. The roofs rot away, the windows came out, woodwork got in, the dampness got in, and eventually The only thing they could do was to pull the beggars down, so they pulled them down. And here we were coming to a very famous boat called the Tyne Home. She used to bring all the crankshafts for Duxford from Rotterdam before the war. When the war broke out, naturally Duxford couldn't get the crankshafts because we were at war with Germany, because they were made in Krupps. So she was given the run on ordinary general cargo. And I think she was sunk in the November 1940, about 10 miles off Sunderland. And I think 3/4 of the Sunderland crew were drowned, the others were saved. But that's a very famous ship called the Tyne Home. The first aluminium bridge in the world was built at the Hendon Dock and the Hudson Dock, and it was built in the 1950s. Here we have the loading berth for all the coal ships. Here we have the fitting out quay, the North Eastern there, and there's the North Eastern Marine in the background, and there's the South Pier there, look. Here is the lifeboat into the south entrance. It's a rowing lifeboat, as you can see, and as I told you, we had 4 lifeboats, and this is one of them. And this is at the south entrance side, the old fish quay. Now, that's not the fish quay in the river, that's the fish quay in the docks at the south entrance. Now, if you had plenty of money, you could go to London for 18 shillings return. That was first class. If you hadn't the money, you lived in the forecastle or on the decks or in the forecastle for 12 shillings. But it called it Scarborough during the summer. But it was lit with electric. Fancy ship being lit with electric. And that's the boat coming into the Hendon Dock to be unloaded. We don't know what happened here, but we assume this is one of the Rose Line boats. And this is at the Deepwater Quay. How we know it's at the Deepwater Quay? There's the sheer legs at the background. And here is what an Empire ship was like. She was engined by the North Eastern. She was sunk, unfortunately, on one of the Arctic convoys to Russia in the 1942s. That there is the pit props, all being unloaded by stevedores or dockers, ready there to be shipped to the collieries inland, as I told you about the props. We used to go to Scotland, to Bund Island, the Bund Island shipyard. And they used to get lunch there, and they used to come down there and get the engines in. And then the North Eastern men used to go back up there and maybe work for 6 months. So I've worked on in the shipyards and on the river nearly all my life. Now here we have a good photograph taken in the 1930s, and it's taken at Bund Island. This is the boring bar team. That man there is Jackie Middlemas. They lived in Ward Street, and unfortunately Jackie Middlemas was killed in the fighting in Haifa in the 1947. Here we have Ned Callaghan, I think it is. Here we don't know who this is, and we don't know who this is, but we do know that one. That's my brother Jim Bell. Now he received the MBE in 1941 in London of the King and Queen, and he also received the Lloyd's Medal for bravery during the war. And that's my father, who was charge hand for 40 years at the North East Marine. And that's the last one, ladies and gentlemen.